Thank you so much. This is a very intimate setting, so I'm really hoping that it can become an interactive session. AI is omnipresent to all of us. And just to introduce myself, I work for a company called CAE. It's a 76-year-old company. I'm trying to look at the screens actually. I can't see the screens. Someone will have to tell me if I'm there? Okay, perfect. CAE is a 75, 76-year-old company in the aviation, defense, and operations space. What do? We actually create digitally immersive software and hardware solutions to help the ecosystems which is on the screen that you can see, the ecosystem of regulators, the operators. Who are the operators? The airlines. Who are the manufacturers? The Airbus, the Embraers, the Bombardier, the Boeings of the world. We work with all of them. We are the only pure play company that actually helps this ecosystem to keep the world safe. How do we keep everyone safe? Aviation and defense is a highly regulated industry. You won't want to be flying in a plane, at least I don't want to, where the pilot is not continuously training themselves every 6 months with all the maneuvers that they are supposed to do. Suddenly, there is a runway where where the runway is not of enough length, where he can maneuver enough in a bad weather and can ensure that we all land safely. I can guarantee you, if you all took a flight today, there is a high probability you use CAE solution. So you can see we work with all the regulated industries and the regulatory bodies. Just to give you an example, where is this particular segment as it comes to adoption of AI? AI is being applied in all the verticals now, from manufacturing to automobile. Obviously, it started in the world of internet very early on. However, there's a huge chasm between adopting AI on the public net, like a chat GPT, versus using it in an enterprise, where an enterprise is highly regulated. There's a lot of compliance and a lot of explanations for any public company to do when they will create their solutions through applied AI. So EASA, sitting in Europe, that we are, EASA already has a 10-year roadmap as to how it looks at adopting AI in the world of aviation. And as you can see, it's a three-stage program. The first one is where AI should be more of an assistant. It should be an assistant to a pilot, to a crew member. Then moving on to a hybrid model, hybrid intellect, where human and machines collaborate with each other. And only by 2035, there's a probability that we can have probably that much of confidence that we can have machines take autonomous decision. I hope I stop flying by then, but let's see. At CAE, we are very much on top of all kind of regulations when we apply AI. When we talk about AI, we are dealing with data. When we are dealing with data, we have to talk about residency, encryption, GDPR, all kind of sensitivities. When we are dealing with aviation, we have to deal with FAA, IATA, ICAO, EASA. When we are dealing with defense forces, we have to deal with NATO alliances. We have to deal with everything that's happening in Asia. So you can imagine the amount of things that we have to consider before we can just apply a tech called AI. But we are still doing it. So I'll share some use cases as to how do we do it to make the world safer. Our flagship platform called CAE Rise. That's one of the platform where we apply data to help train pilots and cabin crew members through assisted maneuvers and co-pilots beyond the instructors. Today, the pilots, the cabin crew members, as I said, is a regulation. Pilots have to get trained. They have a recurring training in the commercial space and in the defense space. Every 6 months, they have to renew their training. Today, that training is very task-based. Through an instructor, they get into a simulator, instructors look at them, they perform certain maneuvers, and then they get certified. However, those trainings are not always judging their competency. The competency is, can you fly when the visibility is low? Or when there is a pressure situation, when there is suddenly a disaster situation, how do you deal with pressure? How do you deal with lack of sleep? Where is your gaze? How do you look at where are your eyes looking or gazing when you are doing a landing? Many a times, pilots with the autonomous cockpit softwares, many a times they don't even look out of the windows nowadays, which is not right. As a competent pilot, they should always be looking up the window when they are landing. So that's the competency-based training. And today we have more than 3 petabytes of data that we already have in our data lake, using which we create these assistants to the instructors so that we can have much more competent pilots. And there's a benefit to us as passengers. There's a benefit to the manufacturers of the platforms, a Boeing and an Airbus. They don't want to have crashes. They don't want to have a 737 kind of a crash every time, because whatever might be the reason, at the end of it, it's a Boeing aircraft. So that's what we help. We help the regulators, the pilots, the operators, and the manufacturers. This is the example that I said, Singapore Airlines. We are working with Singapore Airlines, where we are helping them to train their pilots by applied biometric. Gaze tracking that I talked about is what we are enabling them to do. The second thing that we do is help the airlines operate. KLM is one of our customers. We work with them. And what we help them to do is to manage their operations. Airline operations is the most complex operations in the world. On a day of the flight, if KLM is flying, say, 10 flights on the day of the operations, if the starting flight is delayed by 10 minutes, then it's a chain effect. And then how do they recover from those kind of disruptions? If there is a delay and they don't get the gate at the landing airport, they are burning more fuel. How do they become more optimal? So this is called operations management, high stress, but very costly affair for airlines. So this is where we also help, through applied AI, the airlines do 2 things. Be more cost effective. We help them to run their operations in a much more cost-effective manner by planning more optimally, but also recovering from disruptions. Those are the 2 areas where we help the airline operations to be much more cost-effective. You can see certain use cases here. We help the airlines in predicting delays. We were just talking to some of my team members, and one of the KLM member was telling them that when they see a passenger carrying a lot of carry-on luggages, they already know the flight will be delayed. But that's a pattern recognition by humans. We are trying to bring that pattern recognition through machines so that we can see how the flights will be delayed. Enhancing crew productivity, workforce planning, the pairing. There is a huge pairing that goes between the pilot and the co-pilot and the cabin crew members. They all need to be gelled together, and it's a lot of permutation and combination that happens there. We also help in the fuel saving, because when an aircraft lands, most of the fuel is used during taxiing. It's not when they are in the air, because in the air, the science takes over. But when they are taxiing, most of the fuel is consumed. And that is where we help them to optimize as to which gate they should go to. Because when they land and to which gate they go, there's a lot of fuel saving and cost saving that can help them. Food wastage. We all put in our food preferences. There is so much food that gets wasted per flight, and we help in optimizing those in-flight services too. When we do all of this, there are certain things we keep in mind, which is sustainability. Very important. Safety, sustainability, doing everything in an ethical way is our motto. Just certain stats. On an average sector flight, 5,000 kilogram worth of fuel is used and 4,000 meals wasted per day. Through our solutions, we help on the fuel 0.75% saving. Now that might seem low, but if you add up to a fleet of 50, if JetBlue has a fleet of 50 aircrafts, imagine per flight what kind of fuel saving we are talking about, and 15% of food wastage saving. This is the yearly saving, 3.8 million kilogram worth of fuel with 500 million worth of food wastage. Just to put it into a layman words, 3.8 million kilogram amounts to around 37,000 SUVs being fueled in a year, and 500 million food wastage amounts to around 450,000 people being fed 3 meals per day for a year. So that's what we are talking about here from a sustainability. That's what our goal is, to help optimize through our solutions. And then we close the loop. Through training and through operations, we see if a pilot, when they are flying and operating a plane, are they most optimal. As an example, I talked about the gaze tracking. When they get trained, they can do all the maneuvers. But when they are actually flying, we can observe, are they maneuvering it right? Did they had a bumpy landing because of the weather or because of their gaze? What was the reason in there? So that we can then help them to become more competent to keep us all secure. The other thing that we are working on right now is something called advanced air mobility. You would have heard about air taxis. That's the upcoming thing, EV tolls. In next 5 to 6 years, it's going to be a reality for all of us. But imagine when these air taxis are flying, they are flying at a lower altitude, in a very high density areas, where the cognitive load on a pilot is going to be very high. And that is where real-time analytics and data becomes super critical. And that's what we are working right now with some of these, like Joby's and Beta Technologies, some of these pioneers in the advanced air mobility sector, to provide real-time data to keep all of us safe, not just in the flight now, but on the land as well, when suddenly the air taxis become a reality. So just to end, as CAE, we are highly cognizant, but as I said, our mission is to keep the world safe. We train most of the defense forces. Just to give you an idea, most of the US Air Force pilots, actually all of them, get trained by us. And we train them on the mission critical solutions to make tough decisions at the time of rescue operations, military operations, in-war situations. We work with all of them. Likewise, we work in the commercial and the business aviation for them to make the most optimal decisions to keep the world sustainable. AI is here to stay, but our goal is to apply AI in a very cognizant manner so that the world continues to be safe. That's it.
Thank you, Abba, for the fantastic presentation. Yeah, let's open the floor to some questions. Does anybody have any questions?
People left, they are all convinced.
Yeah, of course. Your mic.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Perfect.
So my first engineering job was at CAE. I spent
really?
quite some time there, and my last project was a simulator related to the International Space Station. So I was always interested in space. Interesting, I worked for IBM for a long time, and my last project at IBM was to start a AI potential solution at CAE called Sentinel.
Yeah.
Is that related to RISE?
Yeah. So exactly, it is. So Sentinel is more kind of an IoT enablement today, because that's the ingestion piece. Because simulators, once they go onto the field, that time simulators were not IoT enabled. So they didn't have the inbuilt mechanism to push the data for certain actions automatically to our data lake. So Sentinel was a solution to overlay for us to do the data ingestion from our simulators.
The other thing, at that time, there was nothing related to biometrics.
Yeah.
I don't think they were even collecting biometrics about 8 years ago.
Yeah. So, but now we are entering into biometrics.
Very interesting.
Including the pulse rate. We have trained Japan Airlines in our defense segment recently, where we are trying to train ab initio cadets who just come out of the schools to do adaptive learning themselves. Because the newer generation is much more about self-learning. They don't like that much classroom learning. So we are trying to shift left to cater to that kind of newer generation through adaptive learning as well.
Great company.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the question. That was an interesting one. Anyone else? Yeah, right there.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I work for NATS, which is the UK air traffic control provider. Your final slide there about eVTOL and air mobility. I wondered what your opinion was on the future of commercial controlled airspace and then the integration of those other platforms, and if we'd see some sort of integrated airspace or if you see them being kept distinctly separate.
You know, you mentioned you work for the traffic control.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's something we are also working with some of the ATCs because, to your point, the whole advanced air mobility is still an evolving sector where the play of the commercial and the business aviation in the world of eVTOLs is still being designed. But we absolutely work with some of the ATCs, like, we work with. We are currently evaluating certain discussions with air traffic controllers in the Montreal area, with the Montreal airport. Because if you will see, the moment this kind of conversion of assets and the vehicles start happening, with the kind of operations platform that we offer through our flight services suite of products, that really helps you to do this kind of an end-to-end operations management of the whole fleet. And there's a company called Joby, which is actually has a lot of folks from Uber. A lot of Uber folks left, and they are creating their own operations platform. They are starting with eVTOLs, where they are trying to Uberify that whole space in the world of eVTOLs. So how does that integrates with the ATCs given the lower altitude? I think is something we are all exploring, working with some of the ATCs as well.
Thank you for the question. Maybe I have a question of my own.
Sure.
So, of course, you're trying to use AI and trying to collect as much data as possible from the pilots and the training exercise, and you're trying to improve the course. Let's say you're trying to have a better judgment on whether to certify them or not. But do you also use the data to make the system itself more self-learning or make it better? Because of course you're not flying an entire AI system on the aircraft just yet. And as you said that you probably would not want to fly in such an aircraft.
Yeah.
How does that mechanism work?
So if I understand your question right, you're saying with the amount of data and information that we have, how are we leveraging that data beyond applying and increasing the competency of the student in making the machines better and the
Exactly.
aircrafts better?
Yes,
That's
perfect,
where
yeah.
I said, we work with the whole ecosystem. So as an example, we just announced a huge partnership with Boeing.
Yep.
And we are starting first in the Asia region because Boeing doesn't have all the data of training on all of the Boeing platforms. We have it.
Yep.
So where we are working with Boeing now is because they are the actual aircraft manufacturers
Yep.
to provide that information to them and see where we can play together.
Yeah.
Because eventually if we have to do this kind of data, the whole data thread has to come together, which today sits sometimes with the operators, with the airline operators, sometimes with the manufacturers, a lot of it with us. We have to complete that thread. So there's a lot of that kind of ecosystem discussions that are happening, but it's not there yet,
Okay.
unfortunately.
Do you think ever in the future it will become like you personalize your car, right? You can just can you personalize a pilot's cabin?
You can personalize. So I will tell you, Airbus is right now, I forgot the name of the program. Airbus is working on a program where they want to be a Tesla. They want to be just creating the body of the aircraft and everything else is electrified and software.
Yeah.
So that's happening.
Yeah.
That's happening, and yeah, the whole electrification and the softwareization of the cockpit is happening.
So I can sign in, and that thing will come up.
Hopefully, we just have to be cautious about it. When do we get there?
Yes, completely. Okay, that was excellent. Back to the audience. Any other follow-up question? Yes.
First of all, thank you. That was a very good presentation. I enjoyed it. I work also myself in a company called Zero G, which provides AI for aviation, specifically for Lufthansa. And we also have like very similar like projects, same as you. And I was like really touched by the air taxi project that you said. What do you see about like the concepts, and what would you say like is the timeline of that, like how to say the whole process to be into action?
I do believe in next 4 to 5 years, especially in some of the cities like Paris, it's going to be a reality. The only difference in the eVTOL sector is because it's starting in this age, there's an upfront thinking of digital first. They are not looking at manufacturers versus operators versus traffic controllers, because many of these startups are coming from Bay Area or from the Silicon Valleys, right? As I said, the Uber. So they understand the concept of data, digitalization. So you see that thought process in some of the startups that I have spoken to. That's one difference. The other thing is the infrastructure, because these ports, vertiports as they call it, would be in the middle of the city. There wouldn't be an airport. It will be like your bus stop. So they are looking at making sure that those vertiports are lean and electrified, sustainable, and completely digitized. So a lot of that work is already happening. We are very active there too ourselves, because we already have, as part of our solutions offer, everything. We have the simulators, because you still have to train those pilots, right? We also have the drones concept, the unmanned air vehicles, because in defense, that's the shape air taxis take. They are more like drones and more kind of a mission unmanned vehicles, plus the vertiports and plus the overall operations management. Because if you look, United just had they bought a fleet of 100, I believe, eVTOLs to come as part of their fleet. But their goal is that when their normal commercial passengers land at an airport, now they can, like an Uber, they can book an eVTOL to go from Newark Airport to Battery Park in Manhattan, which otherwise take 2 hours for someone to go. So those are the kind of use cases that are being thought about. I do believe in 3 to 5 years, you will start seeing them happening in Dubai. Maybe next year, at least some of the pilot sectors are being opened up. So it's happening.
Okay, interesting. So VTOL. So will we land here in VTOL in 5 years in Amsterdam?
Hopefully.
How far do you think Amsterdam is going to be? You compared Paris and you're very near to the US.
Europe is very active. Europe is very active in this space. In fact, EASA is, as I said, EASA is the first one that published their AI roadmap, but they also have a complete roadmap on advanced air mobility, as does NASA, because NASA is very active in the advanced air mobility, given the cusp between, as I said, unmanned air mobility and advanced air mobility. So these regulatory bodies are working together. I do believe Europe is always pushing the envelope, and I see that happening.
Yeah. Is there like a requirement a city should have at minimum to
Yes.
step up with this air mobility?
Yes. It's the readiness of the infrastructure, as I said, the vertiports.
The network and
the network, the
digitization.
vertiports, and all those
Right.
pieces.
So I think Amsterdam is set quite well for it. Great. Okay, let's take one more question. Anyone else? No? Okay. Maybe then again, I have no one question. So you said that, of course, you train the pilots, and you said that, of course, you're going towards, let's say, drone is going to be the next stage for even military and even for commercial. I mean, VTOL can end up with drone kind of situation where you don't need the pilots for doing. How do you train the operators? Because now they're doing kind of teleoperations, telepresence. They must take a different type of training and certification compared to, the pilots actually flying the aircraft.
That's a good question. So when we talk about drones or unmanned air mobility, we already have a program called Predator in our defense space where we actually train them. And there the training happens virtually using synthetic environments. So we already have digital twins of many of the cities and many of the airports, where if someone has to go and take a drone with some, I don't want to call it, but some kind of a missile or something, how do you train it? How do you maneuver it? Those kind of synthetic environment-based simulations is enabled through our immersive solutions. So there we apply technologies like mixed reality, augmented reality, VRs, and the digital twinning concept of the cities and the airports and everything, using satellite imageries and really creating a digital twin of the city where one might want to train to fly a UM.
Perfect. Good to know that they are being trained and all our pilots are safe.
Oh, yes.
Do you have a last word to say to all of us to see what to look forward to?
I think I would just leave it with one message, and thank you so much for being an ex-CAE. It's a great company. I joined it a year ago, coming from pure commercial tech sector, creating SaaS and PaaS solutions. Given the current geopolitical situation that we all are living in, This is a cause which is very near to my heart now, but I also believe that being aware of such missions that the companies like CAE are on, that are, as I said, our mission is to keep the world safe, be it in the defense or the commercial sector. It just gives you a cause and a mission to get applied to. So check us out. Be interested in us more and more, and I look forward to getting more feedback about us and our solutions.
Thank you so much. Thank you for keeping the world safe, Evan. Thank you.